Hi, everybody. I'm Karina Ferris, the current Miss Nevada, and welcome back to the Inform to Reform informational podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you all to Devon Reese, one of our Reno City Councilmen today, for his interview with Inform to Reform. Thank you so much, Devon, for being here. If you want to say a few things to get us started.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. It's such an honor to be spending a little bit of time with you. My name is Devon Reese, and I'm the current Reno City Council member at large. And then I'm running for re-election into the Ward 5 City Council race. And so, yeah, I'm the proud Reno kid and born and raised here, and have raised my children here as well. So I just love this community and love the opportunity to serve.
Awesome. Well, we'll just get right into questions. So, you sort of kind of answered my first one, which is where you grew up, which obviously is Reno. I'm a Carson City native, so not too far away, but I do live in Reno now.
A little secret. I was born in Carson City, but raised here. So I was born at Carson Tahoe, the old Carson Tahoe. You're probably born at the new Carson Tahoe. But my mom raised us here in Reno when she became a nurse in the late 1970s. We moved from Carson to Reno. So I've been here ever since.
Sense. Well, sort of before your career in politics, what was your career beforehand, and do you still work in that career outside of your time in the political field?
Yeah, so I am not a career politician. I had a career before, and I have a career now, and I'll have a career after the time in office. But I am by profession a lawyer. The way the Reno City Council works is you can also hold outside employment. Some people do, and some people don't. I have a law practice with a couple of partners and a couple of attorneys that work for me, but I don't get to practice law much because my focus, of course, is on serving the citizens of Reno.
What school did you go to for law? I'm actually interested in going to law school in the future, and so that's a fun connection that we have.
Yeah, I love that. Well, when I went to law school, the state of Nevada did not have a law school, and so I had to look elsewhere. And so I went to the University of Kansas. So I'm a Jayhawk. I bleed crimson and blue, so rock chalk Jayhawk. But now you have a few more options because the University of Nevada, Las Vegas has a law school. And so, yeah, I went to the University of Kansas.
Well, so moving forward, what sort of motivated you to run for city council, and what was sort of the what bridged the gap between your career in law and then running for city council?
Yeah, it really was that I was practicing law, and the type of law I practice is labor and employment law. And I got to a point in time in my legal practice where I looked around, and most of the solutions for the kinds of things that my clients had and needed solutions for involved political solutions, right? There's a lot of different skills that a lawyer possesses. Sometimes it's litigation, sometimes it's negotiation, sometimes it's arbitration, things like that. Well, another avenue for resolving disputes when parties have them is the political process. So I started spending a lot more time with political folks. And I thought, hey, I feel like I could do this job well and serve this community. This community has given a lot back to me. And so I felt like it was an outreach of my belief in public service. And so it's just really that is how I ended up in it. Now it's been about 6 years that I've been on council, and it really has been the privilege and honor of a lifetime to do it.
Oh, amazing. Well, moving right into my next question, which was how long have you been on city council, which is 6 years now. But what are the term limits for city council?
Yeah, Reno City Council members can serve a total of 3 terms of office. Sometimes those terms are 4-year terms. Sometimes by happenstance, when you either came in midterm, or maybe in our case, we had a mayor who was at one point in time the at-large member and then became the mayor, that can go up or down from that 12 years. But generally speaking, it's a general principle that it's a 12-year term limit. There's a way that it could be extended by virtue of you're running for another office, which would be just the mayor's office.
So can you explain what an at-large representative means? And I know that at-large is being taken away and you are now running for Ward 5. So what does that switch look like, and what are the differences between at-large and Ward?
Yeah, there are different models, and different communities in this country use different models. Some councils have every member elected at large, meaning every member runs into the entire city and the entire city votes for their members. That's an at-large model. There's other ones where it's everybody's in a ward. So everyone's in a neighborhood where they run, and they don't have to run against the other council members who are running in their own wards. And that's really what our model has now become. We used to have a hybrid model where we had 5 members who were elected in their own wards, an at-large member, that's been me and will be me until November, and then a mayor. And the mayor and I ran citywide in our last elections. The ward members just run within their ward. So because the legislature decided to eliminate the at-large position in favor of adding another ward to the council, I am now running in Ward 5. So after this election cycle, there will be 6 wards and a mayor. Part of the issue there is they were trying to really distinguish the mayor as being a different job, so that the mayor would be an independent job and the other council members would be an independent job. And I suppose in theory, the council members could run for 12 years and serve on the council, then they could jump over and serve for 12 years as mayor. Um, you know, Ronald Reagan once said that politicians are like diapers. They should be treated, or they should be changed early and often. I think 24 years in any one body is a long time. So fundamentally, I think term limits are a good thing and certainly are an important part of our democratic process.
Agreed. It sounds great that we have term limits in a local representative way, because I mean, I know in our United States Congress we don't, and that's a big hot topic issue going on right now. And so it's nice to know that this is available here in Reno. Moving on, what has your election cycle looked like? I mean, has it been different in the different years that you have ran? How is it different this year, now switching from at-large to just Ward 5? And are there any unique experiences that you've dealt with throughout the election cycle?
Well, I think every election cycle is unique, right? You're dealing with both national trends that can impact your election. You're dealing with economic trends that impact your election. Certainly, you're dealing with different opponents at times. Sometimes people run again and again. But I think the key difference between this election and last is not the change from at-large to a ward, but rather that the last election cycle, we were running during a pandemic. And so it really limited the type of voter contact and outreach we could do. We spent a lot of time talking to people on the phone, text. And in this cycle, there's been a bit more emphasis on being able to talk to people at events and on the doors, so to speak. And so, yeah, both election cycles have been a privilege to get to know my neighbors and what their concerns are. But they have been different. And I think that chief difference was really related to the pandemic that was going on in 2020.
Awesome. So will you explain a little bit about the process of filing for candidacy, how that works on a city level? Because I know how it works on a state level, but is it the same for city members? And how did that look for you?
Yeah, in this state, they're all pretty similar, right? You have to go to the place where you're hoping to be a part of it. So in my case, the city. So you go to City Hall, to the clerk's office, you pay a filing fee, which is pretty nominal, and you sign up to do it. That's really literally it. All you have to do is be able to sign and pay your fee, and then you're off to the races. Other offices are pretty similar. I think nonpartisans probably in this state are the only ones that have to collect signatures in order to qualify for the ballot. But here, anybody who wants to pay the fee can run for an office.
Awesome. Okay, great. So speaking about running for office and elections, were you in the primary election? And I know you'll be in the general election, but what specific elections do city councilmen and city councilwomen go through?
Yeah, so every council member who has more than an opponent will face a primary and then ultimately a general. In Nevada, we essentially have it that anyone can show up to file. So you could have one person file or you could have 20. And the primary just winnows it down to the final 2. And then the general election, of course, in November is where the top 2 vote getters will face off against one another. So in my particular Ward 5, there were 4 candidates. There were, Tara Webster, Sheila Pachode, Brian Cassidy, and me. And in the general election, it would be just me and Mr. Cassidy.
Okay, awesome. Good to know. So on city council, how often do you guys meet, and what do those meetings look like? So how do they start? What issues are talked about usually? How does it wrap up? Are there any formalities that go along that you do at every single meeting? Just sort of what those meetings look like.
Yeah, so our charter, which is the constitutional or formational document for our city, governs how we operate. So our charter says that we meet twice a month. And in this case, we meet every other Wednesday. We meet the second and fourth Wednesdays of every month throughout the calendar year. Occasionally, the mayor will call a special meeting and can add, according to her powers, other meetings as needed. Sometimes, for example, during the budget cycle, we meet a little more frequently than every other week. Uh, and then during the summer, sometimes there's a break there where they take the first two meetings of July and they stack them on the first two Wednesdays. And then they put the last two Wednesdays of July, so tomorrow and next Wednesday, and they put the meetings there to give our staff a break during the middle. So that's basically our schedule. We do that year round. We start at 10 a.m. in City Hall. If there are appeals always happen at night. So we call that our 6 p.m. appellate calendar. And so, but every council meeting is kind of, it's run according to a previously noticed agenda. There are items that are on there that are decided by the city manager's office and the mayor, what our agenda will be. And then we observe Robert's Rules of Order, and we have some of our own rules about how the meetings are conducted and what formalities we observe. But generally speaking, those meetings start at 10 and they can go from 10 to 2, or they can go from 10 to midnight. You just know, depending on how many people show up for those meetings and what interesting items are on the agenda, but that's generally how they run.
Okay. What are a few of those interesting items that have been on the agenda? And have there been any city council meetings that have gone till midnight that you've been sitting on and have gone way past the time yet that they usually go?
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've had one that late, but certainly in recent months, we've had one that started at 10 and ended at 9 p.m. So you're talking about 11 hours. And, people's brains don't really function that well after you're sitting in the same seat for any length of time, but certainly after 11 hours, I'm not sure you're making good choices or good policies. And so, generally speaking, though, no, they're pretty orderly and people come out. Our topics that we talk about are generally the business of the city. So a lot of that has to do with where things are built, what kind of growth patterns we want for our neighborhoods. Sometimes we're talking about our budget and how to set our priorities. Our priorities at this city council level have always been about some very core beliefs, public safety being one of them. So we're very supportive of our police and fire departments. Sometimes we're having to tinker with their budgets or buy new equipment. We are the first council to have balanced our budget in like 30 years. So that's been part of what we do is really look very conservatively at our budget projections and outcomes. And then we've engaged in a lot of capital projects. We've built the first community aquatic center at Moana Springs that'll open in August. We have a brand new police station that'll open this summer as well. We're going to start and build a new central fire station downtown. And then about 3 years ago now, we stood up the Nevada Cares campus, where our homeless and unsheltered population live. So, the meetings are very interesting because they are always covering topics that generally interest people. And so we do a lot of different kinds of things, but not everything on the agenda is that interesting, but more often than not, that's what we're doing, the business of the city.
So a little bit about how the money works with Reno City Council. So, I mean, I always tell young voters that when you're voting, obviously the presidential election is important, but voting for your local officials has more of a day-to-day impact on your life. And so how do those budget meetings work? How do the allotment of money, where does the money come from? Does it come from the federal government or the state government? And just sort of how the process of money works in Reno City Council?
Yeah, so the city of Reno's budget is right almost at $1 billion, so a billion with a B, and it is a combination of residential tax that we get through property tax, and then it's a mix of things like sales tax, room night tax. It's various things that are collected by the county, and then they're a pass-through agency and entity to us. So we receive those funds again from primarily property tax, but it's also sales tax and some consolidated taxes. And so that's how we are funded. And then every year, starting in right around January, February, we start to look at and build the budget for the coming year. Our calendar year is July 1 is a new calendar year for the budget cycle. It doesn't go on a calendar year, January 1. And so you're just working with your teams to make sure that you have money for the priorities that you have as a city. And we hold, anywhere between 8 and 15 meetings about our budget because we really want and expect public to have input on it. And so the staff makes presentations. Our different departments will identify their needs, and we're trying always to stretch our dollar as far as it can go. And ultimately, a budget is a reflection of our priorities. And you said it best, I think, which is that a lot of what happens here locally impacts people very specifically and directly. So we try to be mindful of that in the budgetary process.
Awesome. So as a city councilman and city council in general, do you guys work with other city councils, per se, Carson City, or do you work with other local politicians, other state politicians, and federal politicians as well, or is it more just the city council as one group?
Yeah, we work with everybody, right? We are obviously, we exist from the federal government, then down to the state government. So we have partners in Washington, our senators and our congress people, even the president of the United States. And then we work with our state level folks through the legislative process and our governor. Then we work within Washoe County. Washoe County is the county in which we sit and operate. And within that, there are 2 cities and a general improvement district. So there's the city of Reno, the city of Sparks, and then Incline Village. And ultimately, we all work together because not only do I serve on the Reno City Council, but I'm also on, I think, 14 other boards and commissions. So, for example, I'm the chair of the Regional Planning Governing Board. The Regional Planning Governing Board is the super government of our region because it's made up of representatives from each of the other entities. So there are people from the county, people from the city of Sparks City, from Reno, all on there doing regional planning efforts. And then, for example, I serve on Truckee Meadows Water Authority. I serve on the Regional Transportation Commission. I am the vice chair for the District Board of Health, which is now called Northern Nevada Public Health. And then I serve on a whole bunch of other committees that would, not be as interesting to your listeners. But again, it's not just city council. So we sit on that every other Wednesday, but we also have 14 other boards and commissions that in my case I serve on. And so those meet, basically once a month, and you go and you do the work that those committees have. And they touch on everything again from, public health and safety to transportation to water to regional planning needs. So it really is a complex set of things. But of course, we work with all our local elected officials. We don't have a lot of work that we do with Carson specifically, but of course, we do have reasons to work with them and certainly are part of the National League of Cities and different organizations where we work across different jurisdictional boundaries. Here in Northern Nevada, of course, we also work with EDAWN, which works with folks out in Fernley and Fallon, Carson City, and those are really addressing, regional economic development activities.
Okay, awesome. Do you guys have any specific goals in the upcoming year or the upcoming few months for the Reno City Council that you guys have in mind for Reno? Yeah, for the Reno City Council.
Well, I can only really speak for me. And of course, my priorities have always been first and foremost public safety. Second, I'm very and particularly interested in our recreational opportunities. So parks, pools, public spaces. And then the last thing is kind of a hodgepodge of things. I'm interested in making sure that we have, a dynamic and resilient community, one where arts are celebrated, one where people are able to find affordable quality housing, places where people feel safe in their homes. So it's kind of a mix of people-centered priority focus. But, again, we work on those things every day. And so it's kind of, refreshing where someone like you is interested in learning more about it. And I think that makes a lot of difference to all of us.
So how does city council sort of directly impact those goals, and what decisions do you guys make that helps with, like you said, the people first policies?
Yeah. So again, I suppose it relates back to an earlier conversation we had about our budget, right? So if my goal as a council member is public safety, then I have to make sure that there are adequate resources to hire enough police officers, to buy replacement ladder trucks for the fire department, to build a new public safety center, to build a central fire station, right? So without the budget to pair with your priorities, you're just kind of dreaming about things. So a lot of what we do is we enact our priorities and policies through our budget. That's really the first thing I would say about it. The second thing is there's a functional question of leadership, right? I have been someone who has said we need to balance our budget. We don't want to spend money we don't have. We don't want to overspend. We want to live within our means. And so doing that, though, took some effort, right? Because a lot of times councils in the past would overspend and they would essentially either pay for this year's items with last year's savings, or they would mortgage this year's items on next year's budget. And we don't do that. We prioritize what we can afford to spend in a calendar year, and we balance our budget every year. And then the last thing I would say about leadership, and this is sort of a not really, it's more of an esoteric concept, I would say, is when I came onto the council, I prioritized adding more parks and recreational activities. Then the pandemic happened, and it became clear that that really was a way that people could connect not only with each other in open spaces, but really focusing on health. So we have been the council that has prioritized building a new aquatic center. And that is the first real investment in public resources in our parks and recreation that have happened in this community. We haven't had a pool there at Moana for 20 plus years. And so you have to connect your priorities to the budget, but also have the willingness to lead in an area to make those goals a reality.
Moving a little bit away from policy and budget, do you have any specific memories from being a Reno City Councilman that have stuck with you up until today?
Yeah, there have been a couple of things that really have spoken to me. Certainly, I've spoken already about how important it is for us to break ground on the Moana Springs Aquatic Center, which will open this fall. But I learned to swim in that pool originally over on Moana. So I had lots of fond childhood memories. So a couple of weeks ago, I got to go in and take a tour of where we were in the progress under that pool. And, there was a pretty emotional moment for me just thinking about the fact that I learned to swim at that pool. It closed and it was gone for 20 plus years. And now we're going to reopen it. And when it reopens, it will be an incredible space for our folks here in this community to recreate. I imagine we'll have future Olympians who are learning to swim in that pool. Certainly we'll be teaching life safety skills about, water safety, so we can help people not be in difficult and dangerous positions and avoid drowning. So there's a lot of emotion and good energy that I have towards that aquatic center. But there are moments throughout the course of serving on a council for 6 years that you forget very easily because you make a pretty easy vote and you move on. But that's one that'll stick with me for a long time.
Wow. Yeah, I know we have a local Olympian, Krista Palmer from Douglas County, and so it's exciting to see the possibilities of the future and what we could
Krista's pretty
create.
awesome. She won't be representing us this year at the Olympics, but she is an Olympic medal winner herself in her own right, and she's just an awesome person, and I always enjoy interacting with her.
Yeah, she's amazing. I really adore her. She was actually my gymnastics coach when I was little, so we're pretty close. Yeah. Besides elections, how do the residents of Reno drive agenda items or change within the council?
Well, I certainly believe they're at the forefront of everything we do. We have public meetings, and of course, those meetings are agendized and shared with the public. We do a lot of outreach to figure out what the temperature for various things is. We use surveys, we communicate on social media, all in order that we can have, a really representative voice for what the community's needs are. And so our public commenters come and they can speak at the meetings. And of course, each council member can, open themselves up to communicating with folks about certain topics of interest. But we just try to be as accessible and available as we are able. And, each council member has a different way of doing that. I just try to be responsive to the inquiries when they come, and I, return all my emails and my own phone calls. And it's really me when you're talking to me. It's not a staff member, it's not a computer or a bot. You're getting to talk to me. So we really do value their public's input and really seek out opportunities to learn what that input is about.
Awesome. Well, sort of bouncing off of that, do you have a message for voters today going into this election cycle? I mean, I know the 2024 general presidential election has been a bit of an insane time in history. And so, do you have any messages for voters today who are feeling a little bit lost or frustrated with the election cycle?
Well, I think every election presents a choice, right? And we all, as folks who vote in this country, very much value highly that right to vote. And so, of course, I encourage everyone to vote. Get out and vote. Make sure that you've got a plan for voting. Make sure that if you're working with folks who are, mobility challenged or aging or really needing a ride to the polls, offer them that opportunity. But we've got to exercise our most sacred obligation, which is the ability to elect our leaders in this country. And I'm confident that people will do that. And I think that they take very seriously that charge.
hmm Are there any messages that you have specifically for youth voters? I mean, statistically, youth voters 18 to 28 are the least likely to vote in our nation. And that's something that Informed to Reform is aiming to change with interviews such as these, with constitutional education in elementary schools, and voter registration drives across the state. And so, do you have any messages specifically for that younger age gap of voters who aren't quite exercising their voice as much as they should be?
Yeah, first of all, I think that's about to change. You're about to see a youth movement in this country, which will create waves of change for the kind of policies that people in that age category are interested in. I think that this country is really quickly recognizing that voting bloc and that demographic are folks who have really incredible ideas. They have the type of energy that is really infectious. And quite frankly, they want to fix some of the things that prior generations, including mine, have wrecked. And so, to folks who are of the younger generation, I'm excited to have you come into electoral life. I'm certainly happy to earn the opportunity to have their vote. I think that we would be foolish not to think about the monumental impact and shift that's going to happen as all those young voters realize that they do have a lot of power, especially if you look at the way that demographic trends in this country are trending, to know that the future really is a much younger and brighter future, and I can't wait to see it.
Well, awesome. I'll give you the floor to wrap up in any way that you feel that you would like to. And thank you again so much for joining us today. I'm really excited for that message to be put out to our youth voters.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I know we covered a lot of topics, and certainly I'm always available to follow up with people if they want to talk in more depth about any particular topic. What I will say is that podcasts especially have changed the nature of people's access. And so I'm appreciative very much for the format and the opportunity you've given, but also just your interest in it. It's not something that I think comes naturally. There's lots of things to do with your time. So diving into the political minutia of local elections might not be on the top of everybody's list, but I'm glad it was on yours. And certainly it's a passion of mine. So, awesome. Good on you. Let's keep going. And I can't wait to see where you head with your own career aspirations and maybe political goals someday. And we'll see you on the other side here.
Yes, thank you so much. Again, thank you everybody for joining us today on the Inform to Reform podcast. I'm excited that you were here, and thank you so much again to Devon for joining us today.
Bye, friends.